Welcome to Self-Care for Extremely Busy Women. It's a hectic life out there, so come on in, settle down, and relax. Here's your host, the author of The Extremely Busy Women's Guide to Self-Care, Suzanne Falter.
Hi, friends. I'm so glad you're here. It's Suzanne, your guide in self-care. And today, we're going to hunker down with some good old-fashioned financial clarity advice. I've got Ashley Feinstein-Gerstley on later in the show. First, however, I'd like to share something brand new. You know, I get a lot of questions in our Facebook group about self-care. That would be the self-care group for extremely busy women. Very cool place to hang out. The other day, I put up the question, what are your biggest questions about self-care? And in came some really excellent questions. And I thought I'd just pick one for each show and answer them here on the podcast where I can go into a little more depth. If you have a self-care question that you would like to ask me, send it to me, Suzanne, Suzanne, at Suzanne Falter, that's FALTER.com, and put question in the subject line, and I will help you right away. So one of my great questions I got was from Melissa. She said, what's the easiest way to focus back on self-care when I get triggered by people panicking? Well, that is a very real thing because we are currently, as I broadcast this, in the beginnings of the coronavirus taking place in the world and now in the U.S. There is a lot of panicking going on, and if you don't know about that, you should drop by Costco. There's a ton of people buying bottled water and toilet paper there right this very minute. Here's the thing about focusing back on yourself when you're feeling triggered. There's a couple of steps you can take, which I find helpful. And the first one is to get yourself regrounded. Now, what's it take to get regrounded? Well, we're all different. Some of us need 10 minutes of meditation. Some of us need to take a walk in nature. Some of us need to journal. Personally, I find sitting and journaling on the question right on my laptop a very helpful thing to do. I might write in a little conversation with my spiritual guidance. Hey, help, I'm really feeling disturbed by so-and-so's comment. And I will just kind of close my eyes and tap away and see what comes up. And sometimes some really helpful stuff emerges. Another way to focus back on self-care is to have a conversation with yourself. Just go in a quiet room, be by yourself, shut the door. You can speak out loud. You could speak to yourself silently and say, hey, what's going on? How are you? Ask yourself, how are you? Instead of being focused on the other person's upset, check in with you. This is a regrounding process where you become more familiar with you. Those are just two quick ideas about self-care. And if you do have those questions, please send them to me and I will answer them right here. We are talking about sending an email to me, Suzanne at SuzanneFalter.com. I'll also have a link to my email on the show notes page for each episode, beginning with this one. Now I'd like to read you one of the chapters from one of my newer essay collections called The Joy of Letting Go. This is called How to Give Yourself the Pep Talk You Deserve. Okay, everyone, repeat after me. We are good and wonderful people even when we feel like hell. I woke up with the blues the other day and had a profound experience of finding my way back to some good and loving self-kindness. What it took, first of all, was letting go of the need to be blue. Putting aside that automatic desire to curl up and lick my wounds because, let's face it, sometimes we actually want to play the victim, even when we know that's a pretty lame place. Here are the steps I took to get a grip once more, and may they serve you well the next time you've hit a wall. Number 1, call a friend. Really, we were never meant to slog through this life alone, whether we're with a soulmate or not. Furthermore, those who care about you do want to help. Can you hear that? They really do. So resist the urge to go off and lick your wounds alone. because generally that just makes things worse, right? Number 2, remember that you have no perspective. Now, this is huge, people. Really, it's your life, so generally you can't see the forest for the trees. It's just like Mark Twain thought Huckleberry Finn, yes, Huckleberry Finn, was a piece of trash, and Michelangelo remarked after finishing the Sistine Chapel, "I am no painter," quote unquote. If you doubt your self-worth, keep in mind, your perspective may not be reliable. Number 3, expect the occasional storm. Because that's how life is, my dear. You know suffering just as you know joy, and even sometimes at the same time. Not only is suffering a reliable life experience, but it will ultimately become your most powerful teacher, because that's how it is in this mortal coil. So we don't always want to run away from suffering. Number 4, know that you will be fine. Oh, think about it, dear friend. Even when times were bleak, you came out of it okay, even if a bit dinged up. You always have been fine, and really, you always will be. And then one day, you'll die. Job completed, mission accomplished. Discomfort inevitably leads to something better. Number 5, expect for a miracle or ask for one. Even if you don't believe in a great spiritual organizing principle in this life, why not give this one a whirl? No matter what, your mind will be soothed, your body will relax, and you will feel protected, which ultimately leads to, oh yeah, miracles. Number 6, ask for guidance to bless it or block it. This is a little trick a friend showed me who has a profound faith in a higher power that guides us all. When you're really feeling uncertain about which course to take or so scared you literally can't begin the next step, ask Spirit to bless or block your endeavor, and the answer will usually follow. Number 7, remember the stuff that is working in your life. Somewhere in your dark stew of an existence, there are soft, clear, sweet places. Perhaps that's a beloved friend or a special place that makes you feel wonderful. Maybe even a treasured letter or photograph. Or perhaps it's your work or your health or your kids. Whatever's working, name it right now. Thank it profusely for being in your life. And see if that doesn't give you a little bit of a shift. Number 8, know that this too will pass. Tomorrow you will wake up with 232 billion new cells in your body. That's real. And that alone is reason for hope. Your life is constantly changing, friend, and evolving towards just what's ahead. So this place you're in right now, well, tomorrow, it'll probably be gone. Number 9, above all, believe in your own perfection. Yes, you are already perfect just as you are. We know that. And this experience of uncertainty or doubt or dilemma, this is perfect too. Easy for me to say, right? Well, yes. And I still maintain it's all happening for a reason. The key is to trust that you have everything you need here and now to resolve anything you must resolve. Not only do you have everything, you are everything. You were born whole and complete, and you will die whole and complete. We really were designed to be enough and have enough every minute of every day of our lives, even when we don't feel like it. Once you begin to wrap your head around this truth, the next and final one falls neatly into place. Number 10, give back and know peace. The ultimate game changer is service given from the heart. What is your special gift you could give someone today? This essay that I'm reading for you on this podcast, this is mine. So what's yours? Go ahead and give it. You will be so very glad that you did. Quick question about your personal well-being. Do you have enough birth control on hand? We all need it at certain times of our life, and you can get free delivery, yes, to your door from Pandia Health. If you have an active prescription at your pharmacy, you got insurance to cover it, Pandia Health's delivery service, their refills, their reminder to see your PCP each year, that's all free. Free, free, for real, people. This is the very cool thing. If you need a doctor consult because you want to change what you're using or you don't have that prescription, it's only $29 once a year to access the Pandia doctors. Just enter this code, Busy Guide to Self-Care, all one word, no hyphen, Busy Guide to Self-Care. You get $5 off that doctor consultation. So go to Pandia Health, PANDIA health.com, and sign up now. You're going to totally be glad you did. Okay, everybody. For those of you who are afraid to look at your bank statement, who just feel the incredible pressure of a little too much debt, who don't even like to carry a wallet because, hey, let's stay loose about these things, the gig is up, girlfriends. We've got a self-care expert here whose focus is money. The fiscal femme, Ashley Feinstein-Gerstly. And she's also the author of a very, very beautiful and awesome book, The 30-Day Money Cleanse. Love her work. Ashley is a certified coach, etc., author, entrepreneur, and feminist on a mission to end inequality through financial well-being. She's also been featured by Forbes, NBC, Glamour, and the New York Times. Doesn't get much better than that. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful intro. It's lovely.
So let's get down to brass tacks here for all of the money worriers and money warriors listening to this broadcast. Why do we need a money cleanse? What's the point?
Well, I loved in your intro how you talked about money being part of our self-care routine. And I think that's a beautiful way to look at it. And I think most of us don't look at our money that way. We think of it dealing with our money or taking care of our money is going to be this restricting thing that limits our fun and takes away from our life.
Yep.
Rather than a thing that gives us so much freedom and meaning and removes a lot of the guilt of the purchases that we're already making. Right. So the way you were describing it is a really important reframe in the people I see who have success. So most of us don't start there, but when it feels like an act of self-love or a gift to ourselves, that's when we start having more success in our money lives. But why we need a money cleanse? So no matter what our money goals are, whether it's to pay down our debt, to build a rainy day fund, to invest, to start our own business, buy a home, whatever it is, having more money to do so is helpful. And in the money cleanse, what we do is we actually align our spending with our values so our lifestyles feel bigger and more meaningful. And we're saving a lot more money. So it's this win-win because we're getting conscious, because we're clear on what's important to us, and we let go of the rest.
I love the idea that spending money can be values-driven, because I think for many of us, it's impulse-driven. I mean, what's your take on what motivates us to spend and when it's a good thing and when it's a bad thing?
So much of our spending is kind of on autopilot before we take a look at it. We're buying things because that's just what people do, or it's like what our friends are doing, or it's what we've done before, or we have these auto things charging on our credit cards, and we're not conscious, and it's not an intentional choice of what we want to spend our money on. And that can feel like it's less scary and daunting when we don't know, like that idea that ignorance is bliss, but it actually, like, there is so much stress associated with that. And people say as soon as they look and face what's happening, no matter how bad it is, it just feels like a weight off their shoulders to know, okay, this is what's going on and now I can do something about it. But until then, it can be this big, scary thing to us.
This idea about getting clarity is really, really key, because I think many of us live in money vagueness. Can you comment on that?
Yes. I think a lot of us like to live in money vagueness. So I think it's very easy, especially with technology, to have no idea where our money's going. If you think about Uber or Lyft, we hop in and out of them without even paying, or
Right.
we hit a button and something shows up at our door now. And swiping credit cards feels very different than handing over cash. So we definitely have a lot working against us. And then we kind of don't want to know. If you imagine like an ostrich with our head in the sand, like, I don't know where that money's going. And I find that over time, especially with accounts and multiple credit cards and old 401ks, it's really easy to let our financial lives get complicated. And the benefit to us in that is we can kind of hide from it and not really know what's going on, and assume, oh, we didn't spend that much because if I add up these different cards, but really that causes so much more stress, and then we don't know what's going on. So, and it takes a lot more time.
Yes, as a recovering, formerly vague person around money, I have found myself frequently asking myself, do I have the money for this? And then often, back in the vague days, I'd say, oh yeah, definitely. It just feels like I have enough. Did I look at my balances? No. Did I look at any kind of indicator of upcoming expenses? No. No planning for the future. That's what I really love about your work. So why don't we get down and dirty on what this money cleanse actually is?
Yes. And it's so interesting. We're very irrational with money. So that vagueness is so common and normal. And it's funny when we're thinking about having a tax return or having a bonus coming up, we often spend those things like 8 times.
Right. You're talking about the refund. You're talking about a nice refund check. So we spend them 8 times in our heads.
Exactly.
Before we actually get them.
And then we spend them again when we get them. We act differently because we know that's coming in. But so we can, it's great to be able to giggle at our irrationality, but then hopefully do something about it. So in the money cleanse, what we do is right away get clarity. So the first thing we do is keep a money journal where we write down everything we spend and earn, just the item and how much. And we can do that in a notebook. We can do that in notes on our phone, whatever's easier, as long as we're manually tracking that so that we have to connect with where the money is going. And then we categorize and list out all of our expenses. And of course, we'll forget things. We can add them as we remember them, but into 3 different buckets: needs, frivolous, and not sure.
Like not sure. An easy out.
Yes. And in the book, I challenge people because not sure just means we haven't drilled down enough. So I give the example that taking a taxi during the day might be a frivolous expense, but after a certain time of night, it feels like a need for our safety. Or there's different guidelines. Like we need a certain amount of food at the grocery, but there's definitely items at the grocery store that we would consider frivolous. So it's creating that line and getting really clear about that. And then and again, frivolous is not bad. It's just a category. It doesn't mean it's money we shouldn't spend. But in the first 7 days of the money cleanse, we let go of that entire frivolous bucket as defined by us.
So with those frivolous jottings, I imagine people have some shame. Did I really need to buy the $25 pantyhose or,
Yes, there's so much shame around spending. And it's funny because that's one of the reasons we don't want to face it, yet we're doing it anyway, but it's just not knowing that we're doing it. So there's definitely there's people who experience shame around spending and they actually don't spend very much. And in those cases, those people who are struggling to spend money, it actually helps to remove the pain of paying for them. So some of us, and I would say the majority of us, tend to feel like we're overspending. So a lot of the tactics in the money cleanse we're going to use to have our spending feel more in control. But there are people who have the opposite feeling where they struggle to spend what they want to be spending. But the money cleanse works for them as well. It's just about getting conscious and aligning our spending with our values so that we feel really good about where our money's going.
Mm-hmm. When you feel really good about what you're spending, what is the outcome? Like, why should we want to do that?
That is a great question. So in the money cleanse, we put together our happiness allocation, which is what I call a budget, because the budget word just makes me cringe. And back to that idea that when we plan or make a budget, that it's going to be something that's restricting, and it ends up being the opposite, because if I don't know how much I can be spending in order to meet my goals, every single expense is going to feel guilty.
Great point.
Yes. But if I know, like if I work with someone or someone does the money cleanse and they really love getting massages and they're willing to let go of some other expenses to make that work, and they know that it works with their goals, they're putting as much money aside as they want to, they can go pay for that massage every month and feel really good about that expense because they know it's treating them.
Yeah, I mean, this is very important to the conversation about self-care, because when we take care of ourselves with an overlayer of guilt, we will not continue to take care of ourselves. Really, this is a very, very important podcast because it's foundational for extremely busy women to be able to pursue that self-care. This is great. I also just want to say I really love the focus on clarity. And after my daughter Teal died in 2012 and I had to really reboot my life, I took my spending down to zero pretty much and started all over again. And I had to become extremely frugal and extremely clear. And I'd always been vague. I'd always been a compulsive spender and debtor. And the way I got out of that situation, paid off all my debts and have been abundant ever since, was to begin by writing down a journal of my expenses every day. That was where it started. So I really, really love what you're talking about. Can you talk a little more about intention? You write in your book about intention and how it affects the brain. Can we really intend for more money to show up? Can we really envision wealth? Tell me about that.
Yes. So, and just to your self-care point, because that was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that often a lot of the talk in our society is to treat ourselves, and self-care is spending on things. And so it can be confusing, like, oh, if I buy myself this purse, isn't that self-care or self-love for myself? And so, but really in that time for you, stripping down to zero, paying that down, adding up from there, creating that abundance, that was like the true self-love. So I think it can get a little treat yourself. All of these marketing things that we get thrown at us can get confound to this money thing that's already very vague. But
you have a great list in your book, the list of Frugal Joys. Page 79, for those who have a copy. You take a look at that. She's got, several pages of free things that you can do to create happiness for yourself. Many of them look suspiciously like self-care activities, my friends.
Yes. And it's interesting because that is a really fun, one of my favorite reframes is this idea that often our goals or the things we want to buy they're the goal. So I want to go on the vacation. I want to buy the home. That's actually a strategy to get a certain experience. But there are other strategies, and that doesn't mean we don't want to get the house or we don't want to go on the vacation eventually, but we can add all this joy to our lives in the meantime. Or if we're trying to spend less, we can switch out those items with these frugal joys that are the free or very inexpensive things that make us happy.
So essentially what you're talking about, Ashley, is a retraining of the way we think about how we spend.
Yes. And it's why food and money, I think, are so similar. They're very emotionally charged. It's so much about how we think of them. And so kind of to your question about the intention, we often treat money as if it's just about the numbers. Yeah. So if I do the thing that makes the most financial sense, I'll have the best success in my finances, like pay off the highest credit card debt first, for example, or put as much savings in my savings account as possible and eat ramen every night. But it's really important to keep our motivation in mind. And the motivation is the thing that's going to drive us forward and keep us excited about these goals. And so if I end up paying down a lot more debt because I've been able to feel like I'm winning by checking off the smaller pieces of debt first, or I actually started slow and steady saving so I can be successful at it instead of transferring all this over and then having no money to live and transferring it right back.
Right.
I'm going to be a lot more successful and feel more motivated.
Well, to your point, one of the things I found when I was really struggling with money is I couldn't keep savings. I couldn't see that I was spending my savings on frivolous things. To me, it just felt like savings is impossible. Can you speak to that?
Yes. And this is a very common feeling that we have. There is a principle called Parkinson's law, and it's this idea that things take up as much space as we give them. And it's the reason that when we schedule an hour call, even if we only have one thing to talk about, somehow the meeting gets filled up with all these things, or our junk drawer gets filled up, or our expenses fill our bank accounts, sometimes like down to the cent. We're like, what just happened? And subconsciously or consciously, we are making choices based on what is actually in our bank account. And so when that money is in there, it's going to get spent. And this happens when we get a raise. We'll think, oh, once I get a raise, I'll finally start saving. And then we get the raise and somehow something happens, or a bunch of little things happen that take up that money. And we think, oh, I just didn't earn enough more money. So this can happen over and over. And eventually we realize just how we view savings doesn't work. We view it as money comes in.
So,
we live our lives,
did you like what you heard?
Everybody else first.
Because if you did, guess
bills,
what? If you come by my website, right there on the homepage, you can grab 4 chapters of my new book,
never money
The
left
Extremely
over for us
Busy
to
Woman's
save.
Guide to Self-Care.
And so what we want to do is pay ourselves
you can.
first.
Just come on over
we might have heard
to
before, but what that practically means is getting the money, some amount of money out of sight, out of mind, into a different account.
Thanks.
I'm a fan of the online savings accounts.
Oh, yeah, baby. That's right. That's right. I'll never forget, I had moved to San Francisco with a savings account. I don't even know how I managed to make the savings account happen, but I did. And then, of course, I spent it. So then I realized I needed a car because I was moving to a place that was very car-oriented. And I looked around, and where was the down payment going to come from? Uh-oh. Then I remembered a money coach had insisted I put, a chunk of money away every month in a little account that I'd completely forgotten about that was still back in Vermont on the other side of the country. And sure enough, there was the down payment for the car. It was such a miracle.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So having that money transfer automatically, even if it's that $5 per paycheck, what that does is we might think, oh, that's not really making much progress towards our savings. But our progress is not linear. What that's doing is it's opening our minds to realize that first of all, we are savers and that there is money available to save. And we can always build up from there.
Yeah. So, Ashley, some people listening to this podcast are really immersed in debt and they feel it's hopeless. What can you say to them?
Yes. Well, first, I just want to acknowledge how hopeless that can feel and how easy. I think the first most important thing that we can do when we are feeling hopeless and when we're feeling like we've made some mistakes is to forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
This can happen to any single person. I think one of the easiest ways to find some compassion and forgive ourselves is to realize how much we have working against us when it comes to money, and think about I studied finance and worked in finance and never learned how a credit card worked.
Understood. Thank you.
And just everything. So we can talk about how we don't learn about it. We don't talk about it. It's emotionally charged. $1 billion marketing budgets are coming at us from every which way to have us buy things.
Oh, yeah.
And once we get in starting to accumulate some of that credit card debt, the interest is really high and it's really easy to lose control of that and feel like we're not getting ahead of it. So I think that is a really important place to start, because we're punishing ourselves or holding ourselves, quote unquote, on the hook. We're going to keep ourselves where we are, because why would we reward ourselves by letting us move forward? So I think that's a really important, more emotional place to start. And then, of course, getting clarity around what you have is really important. So it can feel, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed by it, it can feel even more overwhelming to look at exactly what you have and where. But again, that's a really important starting point for figuring out where to go next.
Right. Just getting clear. We're really talking through this whole show about clarity and the power of clarity. I just want to also, your book is completely awesome and I highly recommend it. I hope people will go buy the 30-day money cleanse and put it to work. And for those who find they just can't do it, I might refer you also to recovery programs like Debtors Anonymous and Under Earners Anonymous, and even Gamblers Anonymous, if that's an issue. Because sometimes our compulsivity is such that we are really we really can't rein it in, no matter how hard we try. And those programs are very much grounded in using self-care and turning to self-care and tuning into your needs, using things like Ashley's beautiful list of Frugal Joys to recreate your life and help you get over this hump.
Yes.
So, yeah, and I'll have links to her book and those organizations as well on the show notes page for this episode.
And just to chime in on that, I've had clients have a lot of success with those programs. And not only are the principles wonderful, but there's just so much built-in support and accountability for no cost, which I think is really hard to find.
Right.
Because,
or you might pay $1 for a meeting, and if you can't pay, it's okay.
Right.
So specifically, we're talking about Debtors Anonymous for compulsive overspending and compulsive vagueness. Sometimes people who are unable to spend go to these programs. Also, Under Earners Anonymous, I think, is a fantastic program for people who know they have more potential, but they're not earning at the rate they should. So what else would you like us to know about the 30-day money cleanse before we sign off?
Yes. So along the lines of, you mentioned I can't do it. And of course, if we don't read it, I'm not sitting there telling you to read it or saying, hey, did you get to that next chapter? So we can build in some accountability, tell a friend you want to read it together and say, let's check in on each other. Also, I think a place that we get tripped up often is as soon as we're not perfect or make a mistake.
Yeah.
And it's one of the sneakiest ways that we cheat ourselves is to give up as soon as we're not perfect. So we start the money cleanse. We keep the money journal for one day, but it's a brand new habit we forget. And then we kind of throw in the towel. It's like, I'm not eating sugar, but then I had a piece of cake, so now I'll eat the whole cake,
Yeah.
So it's okay. Every single person is going to make mistakes in their money cleanse.
Yeah.
You just got to pick up where you left off and keep at it and give yourself permission to build these new habits. And I call it a money journey for a reason. I'm still making mistakes and learning and growing.
Yes. And, it's a learning and it takes time. Athena, the German Shepherd, who's just outside my office, she is agreeing with everything you're saying. Commentary by the dog. All right. So Ashley, this has been Ashley Feinstein-Gerstley, author of the 30-Day Money Cleanse. And folks can find your website, your book, and much more we talked about today on the show notes page for this episode. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Now let's take a moment to just chill out, relax, and let our mind ease. If you're driving as usual, I'm going to ask you to pull over. Otherwise, just uncross your arms and legs and loosen your jaw and roll your neck and head and just give yourself a moment to take 3 deep cleansing breaths. Do it again. And one more time. Enjoy the silence of your mind, not thinking about anything right now. Try to imagine all those thoughts just circling the drain and pouring right out of your head into the ground. Go ahead and see that in your mind. Just let your mind go and just be with the silence for just a minute. Let's be quiet together for just a minute. And now, slowly, let a golden, glowing light come into your mind. Maybe it's going to come in from above or below or right through your heart. Imagine a large, white-yellow, glowing presence just expanding all around you and surrounding you and pouring down through the very core of who you are. Let that healing, glowing energy enter your heart, your throat, your head, your neck, all the parts of your body that usually are full of tension, and let it just melt what's there. Let it melt what's there. This is the good stuff. This is the glowing, healing energy that's going to carry you through the rest of your day. Whatever's happened, it doesn't matter. Whatever will happen, that doesn't matter. What matters is this moment here and now and the beauty and essence that it brings to your life. Thank you for being here and for taking beautiful care of yourself today. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Self-Care for Extremely Busy Women. Hit the subscribe button wherever you found us, and you'll hear our next show as soon as it's posted. Everything you heard about today is on Suzanne's website, SuzanneFalter.com, SuzanneFalter.com. Just click on podcast to find the show notes page. Now, go ahead, take good care of yourself.